Welcome. This is For Better and Worth.
The podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you grow and build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young. And we're so glad you're joining us today.
All right, y'all. Let's get into it.
Hey, honey. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Welcome to 2024.
I know. I'm excited. And this is my year because it's 24 and my birthday's 24.
It's going to be my year.
I know. It's like my favorite number. Therefore, and honestly, in my lifetime, this will never happen again. So this is pretty darn cool.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Now that you say that, I know what you're talking about. So
Yes. So this is pretty cool. Anyway, 2024 is going to be great. We're here.
Well, welcome back, folks. We're glad to be back with you all, kicking off 2024 in for better and worth fashion. We just want to bring you something to start your year off. So.
Yes, and I feel like we started thinking about, are we in a place where we, really want to be and questioning stuff and are there things we wish we had done? And so it brought up this whole topic of risk taking because I feel like it's really easy to have a life full of fun and enjoyment and purpose and all of that, and also not take risks. And that came up. And so we figured we'd bring that to the podcast. And so I'm eager to kind of hear how we're different and how we're aligned on this too, because I think, there should never be this expectation that we always see 100% eye to eye on stuff. And I am.
What? What do you mean?
Yes.
We don't see things alike?
I mean, we do. What percentage do you think we're alike in our thinking around money?
Well, in general, with our thinking about money, I think we're probably like 80%.
Yeah, I would agree.
80% on the same page.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes you just want to disagree with me, but it's okay.
Whatever. I'm not a
right.
dissenter, but I feel like, can I be real? Let's just be honest.
You might as well start being real. Keeping it 100 with the people.
Right. Listen, I think you believe you're right a lot of the time.
Oh, Lord. This is how we're going to start 2024. All right, people. Here we go, people.
And I really think that whether I agree with you or not, sometimes I want you to understand that you might not be right. Like it's okay to be wrong sometimes. Yeah, you about to get over there and cough and hack because
you know what? You're right. I'm probably not always correct.
And we've already talked about this before. You don't like to admit when I am right because your terminology is you never say, or I should say, you're trying to learn to say, you're right, honey. Instead, what you say is say
I disagree with that.
That right. You say, I don't disagree with that. Why do we have to have a double negative for you to actually be positive and on the same page with me? That's hilarious.
It's all good. People, we don't see everything the same because we are two people.
Yeah.
And I think it takes both of our perspectives to have a blended, broader perspective when we talk about different things, different topics. So, Hey, the benefit is to you all.
Yes.
Is that we don't see everything the same, but we are in alignment around a lot of things. And, we wanted to kick the year off talking about risk taking and some of the times that, not some of the times, but sometimes when people talk about risk, I think people have a negative connotation associated with it because I know when I think about risk, it makes me think about, loss or, fear of, it's that loss aversion.
Yeah.
And people are more afraid of what they can lose than the potential gain.
Yeah.
And when I think about risk and what we've done over the course of, our marriage and our lives, I feel like there were some opportunities that we should have taken some risks.
Yeah.
That maybe we didn't. And that's what I hope to kind of get through and talk about today, is, give people an idea of what risk is and what good risk is, and maybe some of the
Mhm.
things that you shouldn't be, risking. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can get into that.
I'm very cautious. I am a cautious person. I like to sleep on decisions. I don't want someone, and by that I mean just a financial professional, to just tell me what to do. I want them to help
Right.
me see options and why things are important. I don't want society to be influencing me. Sometimes I bump up against typical cultural norms simply because it is a cultural norm
Right.
and not so like I and I'm also a conservative financial person, which means that I don't tend to veer away from what I know and understand. And so, for instance, I'm not going to get into crypto. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to dabble in things to understand it. That's not my
Yeah,
MO.
like day trading is not something that
Yeah, like
we will probably do, but there are people who do it and do it effectively.
right. I just there are some things that I veer away from. Like for instance, one of those things is, you know, I have been pretty I get content with my house and I'm like, you know what? I don't need a bigger, better house. I think a lot of the times people like to move way more frequently than and we've been in this house now for nearly 11 years and or it
It's
almost
almost
12.
12,
Almost
almost
12
12
years.
years.
And I'm cool with that. And I'm seeing how we could get something different, but like that's a long time to be in a place. And we could have afforded to do something different, but the risk of increasing a mortgage and having it longer, I'm not interested. And so I think, you know, I would rather honestly and a lot of times be comfortable. And the definition of risk is to expose yourself to potential danger, harm. We think of it negatively, but also we could potentially be exposing ourselves to increase and something brighter on the other side. But since we don't know, it is a risk. We don't know which way it's going to go, right?
I find it interesting that the conversation we're not even like getting into it fully yet, but we're just teasing this out a little bit, and I find it interesting that as we're talking about risk, the thing I hear coming from both of us is that one, we've been relatively conservative,
Mm-hmm.
and in that conservative sort of perspective and mindset, we also like stability.
That's a
And
big part of it.
yes, because when you talk about staying in the same home and not moving, that is just having stability, being in the same place. Like
Yeah.
I said recently, I connected with a friend and I said, hey, my number hasn't changed. And I thought about it. I've had the same cell phone number for over 20 years.
That's wild.
And I think about people who I know who I've like got to look at my phone and be like, man, is their number still the same? Because they've had like 4 or 5 numbers in that same time.
Yeah.
And there's things that cause instability that forces you to change your number or change your circumstance situation. And in that regard, I think some of the risks that we have taken or didn't take have led to that stability. But I have a question I want to pose to you. Have there been times when you wanted to take a financial risk, but one of us was hesitant about it?
Yes. I think specifically for me, the risk that I still wish that I had taken, and we still have opportunity to do so, but I do wish that we had gotten in to and stayed in a real estate market outside of our home. So vacation rental property or long-term rentals for others. We had done that for a season and regretted it fairly quickly, but we kept that home for a while and never capitalized or tried to grow our real estate portfolio or anything like that. I honestly retreated. And I admitted this to someone a couple of months ago that, I just said, forget it. I'm not interested in
Mm-hmm.
real estate beyond my primary residence. And so I retreated. And I don't even think that you and I had further conversation after we sold that rental property. I'm not sure that we were so set on getting rid of it that I don't think that it came into my purview that, okay, well, we could get back into it later. I just was so glad that that phase of life was over. But there are, I believe, some upside benefits to real estate and diversifying how we grow our wealth. And that's something that I wish that I had done.
I think it's so funny. Like, that's the biggest risk you feel like you wanted to take, and that we were a little divided on. And I think initially we were on the same page. But I also feel like that's the biggest risk that we took, and it turned out not like we wanted.
That's true, because that was a risk we took by keeping that home instead of trying to sell it.
Right, but
You're right.
It's crazy because it's the same answer to two different questions. You know, what's something that you wanted to do, and what's something that you did. And I just think we did it the wrong way initially. And we talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, I agree with you. I would have looked at broader, different, I'd have just looked at different things opposed to trying to rent, a house or become a landlord of a house that was a primary residence of ours and holding on to it. I would have done it differently. I would have either just said, hey, let's buy a house that's distressed and let's rehab it. I would have been more open to flipping houses at that time, or investing in, more of a commercial real estate property when, pre-COVID, when commercial real estate was something that people were seeking, or even multi-unit, investments from a duplex, a fourplex, or something like that, residential property. And now prices have gone so crazy. I don't think it's too late. We just have to find good opportunities. But it's just so crazy how the one thing that we wanted to do was the one thing that we did, and still it didn't turn out the way we wanted to.
Right. Yeah. So we took a risk, and then we didn't revisit it to do it better.
Well, you know what? 2024 is a new year. It's a new day. It's a new season.
So do you feel like there's a risk you want to take in 2024? Like any type of risk, be it little or small or large, because I feel like that's a big one, right? Like we're talking real estate or hundreds of thousands of dollars in a home. That's a bigger risk. But is there a risk you feel like you want to take, even if it's small?
That's a good question. Because I think I'm entering a point in my life where I'm just gonna do it all. Seriously, and I say that because, like, naturally I want to see, our platform, our podcast grow, and, I want to continue to invest in this and invest in the people that are out there listening.
You silly.
But I also want to, live life to the fullest. And to some degree, that is a little risky, because you could say, well, if you start doing things now, you can sacrifice some of, your future retirement or future gains. But I'm like, to me, I'm willing to risk some of that. Like, investing in bigger vacations with, my family, because we have adult children. And when they start to have their own families, that can change the dynamic of what we're able to do. And so for me, I want to invest in that, because it's more important for me to be creating relationship and memories and connection with my kids than to just solely be focused on future planning. Like, I'd rather spend some dollars today and, I'm not going to sacrifice the future, but I'd rather be willing to take a chance and spend something today and maybe push something else off or shift, some things or some decisions. So, that's a small risk, I think, in the grander scheme of things. But I will agree with you. I do want to go back and maybe look at some real estate syndicates. And that's something I think this year I'd be more willing and more proactive about trying to do, to build our real estate portfolio. So I do want to take some risks in that regard to build more of our financial future and, some of our financial portfolio.
Do you feel like risk only involves an investment of money? So, for instance, the risk is potentially in how much you spend on a thing or put into this idea or whatever it is. Like, let's define how risk
I
can
don't
come
think
about.
so. I think people, when they talk about risk, they think about financial. They think about money. They think about, loss aversion, like I said previously, like, what am I going to miss out on? But you have to look beyond that and see what can you potentially gain. And here's a perfect example. I recently had a colleague at work that decided to leave the organization and went out to a small startup company because they were getting the opportunity to do something that would bring them so much more joy, so much more excitement, and so much more fulfillment that really took into account like several jobs that they'd done previously and they really enjoyed and put it all into one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so different than what they were currently doing, which it took some of what they were currently doing and a couple things they were previously doing, and it was all wrapped up in one job. But it's risky because it's a small startup company. They don't know the history. They don't know what the future can hold. That's a risk.
Yeah.
But they're willing to take that gamble because they saw the upside of, enjoying what they do on a daily basis and the impact they can create out in the marketplace. And I think that's a risk that sometimes you have to take.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at a point in life where I would be more open to hear about things like that if it would bring me a level of enjoyment and if it would bring me a level of satisfaction that was different than what I'm currently doing.
Yeah, and that's interesting because there was an opportunity that came your way not too long ago, and you entertained that idea for a minute. And I was like, I was trying to figure out why. Like, what is it about this that is interesting to you? You've got a great job. You have a boss who you get along with great, and you're making awesome money. Like, what would that risk of jumping to something different do for you? And what is enticing about it? And that would be a risk to you.
It
And
is.
I saw it and I was like, really? He's thinking about that?
I think I feel like I have so many people that I've known over the years that, reach out and they want to talk about, decisions they're trying to make for themselves from a career perspective, or we joke about how much financial information and advice I give away for free. Now I am not a certified financial planner, nor
This
do
is
I hold any licenses.
Right. This is the disclaimer here.
Right.
Please take this to heart.
Right. But like I've talked to so many colleagues over the years and just told them, different strategies or approaches that weren't perspectives that they may have had. And one thing I constantly tell people when they're considering, career opportunities, I say you can't make a decision on incomplete knowledge.
Yeah.
You have to get complete knowledge and a full picture before you can make a decision. And you can't make a decision about something that you know nothing about. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, let me just at least get knowledge. Let me get a understanding, and see if it's for me or if it's not for me. Because one thing I think sometimes people, the mistake they make in careers is they think it's one-sided. I'm interviewing you as much as you're interviewing me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this fit for me? Yes. Or, no, I don't think this is right for me. Good luck with what you're looking for, but it's not me.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes you have to just get complete knowledge. And so, I think people can take risks with careers. They can take risks with investments. They can take risks with, who you're, hanging out with in the evening over dinner and a couple of drinks.
Right.
For all of you people on the dating scene who are looking to be in long-term relationships, there's a lot of risks that you could take.
Right. Yeah. So what's interesting, and you saying all of that, I think the most consistent I have been with risk taking has been in business. So I realized that there is a distinction. One, I took a risk by leaving my job. And this was a long time ago, granted, yes. But I did take a risk back in the day to leave my job and to look to grow a business full time. I was afraid to start the business. Right. I literally was scared to begin something new because I didn't have all the answers like you just mentioned. But that was me stepping out on faith. That was me saying, all right, God knows all. I don't know everything. Let me see if this is like, I was literally deciding to walk on the water. And I felt in that year 2006 that I did more risk taking than I had ever before that, and potentially after that as well. But I have been consistently taking smaller risks in business. And sometimes those risks are reaching out to this person. Sometimes it's investing in a business coach. Sometimes it's, you know, nowadays it's just putting out proposals and having these meetings with potential future partners that scare me. Like, it literally, the numbers and the opportunity is exciting, but it's scary, right? And so I feel like in business, I've done more of that. And then the craziest thing is when I get the money, so when I get paid, when the business does what it's supposed to do and I get money, I'm less risky when it comes into my hands. I'm like, all right, whoo, awesome. Let me wipe my brow now. And I'm like, did that. Now let's keep this money and let it grow.
Right,
and so I haven't made choices once I've gotten those dollars to do things outside the box, like I said, like crypto or the real estate market or whatever. I have not, and I won't even say I've hoarded it. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I feel like I have really just been a conscious investor, a long-term investor. And instead of, oh, well, we've got this $5,000, let's try this new thing. I haven't done that.
Yeah, but let's come on, let's be honest here.
Okay.
If we think about why we have chosen to do things the way that we've chosen, we didn't have a lot of examples in front of us that said, hey, take this risk, here's the potential reward. We didn't have parents or grandparents that were entrepreneurs or that were business owners. We didn't have people that were, multimillionaires that had started from scratch and built something. And so all we knew growing up was, hey, you got to get an education, you got to get a good job, and you can create a life for yourself.
Correct. Our definition of success was framed by our upbringing.
Exactly.
And we took that path so that we can reach that view of success versus, oh, you think outside the box with what you do with the dollars when you get it. That is very
I think
statement.
we have evolved beyond that.
Absolutely.
Because when you left your job, we were already entering a point where we were creating a different, kind of a reality, a new norm for ourselves because we got out of debt.
Yeah.
We already had great jobs and we were on career paths. And so it was a calculated risk. And that's what you and I have definitely taken over the years, is calculated risk.
So I got a question. Do you feel like getting out of debt is a risk? Like the process of getting out of debt?
Absolutely not. Okay. It's a necessity.
Okay. So this is interesting. And that's interesting you say that. And I do want to hear more, because the risk that a person could be taking when they are putting money towards debt reduction could go for something else. So for instance, in our case, we were spending over $1,000 in addition to our monthly payments. So our monthly payments were over $1,000, but we were spending another $1,000 per month on top of that. So in a year's time, that's $24,000 to try and get out of debt. That's what we were doing.
Right.
And any extra funds like, bonuses or tax refunds or whatever, we were putting towards debt reduction. So you and I agreed on taking said risk, but we took those dollars and instead of doing something else with it, we invested in getting out of debt.
I think a lot of people say, well, you got to use other people's money to make money.
And so it was a risk to go against that thought.
And they say, there's good debt and there's bad debt. But I think that we're talking about habits that people have. And you must break the habits of having debt, creating debt, staying in debt. Because what it does, it creates bad habits and it creates comforts that I think can be counterproductive and counteractive to your bigger picture. I'd rather someone take a pause and say, right now, I'm going to risk getting out of debt to not be investing in this or doing this because it's only for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's so important that's why it's so important you do it sooner.
Yeah.
Because when you're younger, you have more time on the backside. So invest a small bit of time on the front side to make the impact to get out of debt. And that is not a limiting factor anymore.
Yeah.
Then you free up that income because the biggest asset you have is your income.
Yeah.
And then it can allow you to go into other areas and do other things. And that's why I say it was a calculated risk for us because we knew we needed to get out of debt because getting out of debt, what did it do? It allowed us to take the next calculated risk, which was you leaving your corporate job to go and start a business while I had a job that could kind of hold us down while you were building that.
Yeah. And I would say I feel like it is the one thing that if we were to look back, I would never do it different. I absolutely would not. We were always on the same page. I still agree with you today, but I also think financial planners, advisors would consider that a risk because what could we have done with that additional $12,000 per year that might have made an even longer lasting impact? What I know of that industry is they would say, invest it to grow, and that could potentially be more than the amount of debt that we paid off. And so I never thought until we just had this conversation that is a risk, but essentially you're right. It was a calculated risk.
Right.
And thankfully we were on the same page, but there are couples who are on opposite sides of that equation. Someone believes that it is wise to invest for the future that sum of money, and someone else feels burdened by the debt and wants to go in that direction. And that could be a challenge for people to overcome because one person's risk tolerance is different from the other and their motivations could be different. And I think that's something that a lot of people have to work through.
I think it's very important for them to work through that because you have to be aligned. You got to be on the same page about how you're going to approach it because it's two things that are acting in opposition to one another. So you're spinning your wheels and you're not going to make progress. And so I think when you're talking about different points of views and perspective, you really do have to get on the same page and decide, are we going to take a pause and focus on this and then come back to this? And that's why it's so important to have those financial meetings, those strategies. That's why it's important to do, like we've been talking about, goal setting, because when you do those things, you come into alignment.
Yeah.
And alignment, I think, is the real key that is the glue that holds everything together. Mm-hmm. Because if there's no alignment, you can't be on target and you're on a journey and parts start falling off the car.
Right.
The next thing you know, the car has fallen apart and it's the two of you sitting there in two seats and you can't go forward.
Because what does alignment do for the car?
It makes it ride. It makes it ride smooth and it makes it stay straight.
There it is.
Because if the alignment is off, the car will veer off to one direction, one side or the other.
That's it. And so I love that word so much more than compromise. Because someone always feels like in a compromise situation that they're giving something up. The other thing that I would say to couples who are having a challenge with what risks to take as a team is to honestly understand what makes this particular risk important to each of you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think getting clarity on what difference that will make. And if it isn't the priority, what is at risk in that scenario? So for you and I, when we were talking about getting out of debt, this was our compass because we both experienced, bankruptcy in our family lineage. We both experienced, you openly have said that you came from a poor household, you know what I mean? And I came from paycheck to paycheck living, and we wanted something different. And we together believed that getting out of debt was a solution, not the complete solution, but it was like the very first step. And so we were in alignment on that. And our why for each of us was clear but different. right? And I think if people can understand what makes that risk worth taking, and to have that conversation versus a strong arm or a compromise or what have you, then you can figure out what alignment looks like for you as a team.
I think that's one of the situations where when you take that financial risk and you're aligned, it can put you in a better situation. Mm-hmm. And that's where the reward outweighs the potential quote unquote risk that you're taking. It's really calculated. And with me, when you take calculated risks, it's better to do that than to just, be flying by the seat of your pants. Yeah. So let's get into make it worth it. Yeah. And so let's talk about that. So, to me, I think I've already brought forward my make it worth it. When you're going to take risks, there's two things you have to do. They have to be calculated and you have to be in alignment, because calculated risk can yield you a far greater reward than just taking a risk by the seat of your pants, because you have alignment on what that can look like in the long term. And so to make it worth it, definitely take calculated risks and be in alignment on what those can look like. So what is your make it worth it?
I would say that my make it worth it is that there's always a new risk you can take. So even when you have taken one and maybe it didn't work out, or maybe there's something that did work out, there's always going to be something in front of you that it might have a positive or a negative ROI on it. And there's always a new way to look at the risks in front of you. So never feel like, oh, since I missed that opportunity, it's over. Or never feel like, well, I took that risk, I'm done taking risks. There's always going to be something in front of you that you get a chance to evaluate and say, is this worth taking? So know that there will always be another chance.
Right. So you can always say, you can make a decision, then always make another one.
That is true on the same topic. You're right. I love it.
Right. Well, hey, this has been good. I feel like this was a great way to kickstart 2024. And I look forward to all that we will do this year and all the content we'll continue to bring to our listeners out there. So until next time,
we're out.
Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all of your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up to receive our free guide, The 7 Reasons Your Money Relationship Isn't Working with Your Partner, on ForBetterandWorth.com.
Until next time, we're out of here.